Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about my big prime, the 500mm f4 Mark 1 IS. This is a lens I've personally owned now for almost 4 years, which is absolutely incredible to think I bought it that long ago. But a lot of you in the comments have been asking when this video has cropped up how well it works with mirrorless cameras, being such an old lens. So what I've done is I've got some photos taken using this lens and my R3 combination, and what I'm going to do is talk through 4 of those images for you and let you know what my thoughts are from the experience using it, and then at the end of the video I'll talk about do I think it's worth you buying this lens in 2024. So let's crack on now, let's get into those photos and go from there. Okay, so the first image we have here is of a polar bear in the water. This is to show sort of like what the sort of speed and everything you can get from the lens is, because this shoot at 1/4000th of a second, how sharp and how accurate the image is, and this is even cropped in as well a little bit. This is shot with a converter at 700mm, and you still get an absolute crisp, sharp image from this age of lens. It's absolutely amazing to see and really nice to see. Now the next photo here is at 500mm. Shows you sort of the depth you can get with the lens. So as you can see, this is shot at f4, so you've got the 2 adult capybaras and 2 of the younger capybaras in the middle are all in the same focus plane, so they're all nice and sharp. The one in front is slightly out of focus, and you've got this really nice out of focus blur and a little bit of bokeh there from behind as well. So a really nice clean image, really nice sharpened details on the fur and all the capybara there. So again, a really nice image. Now this image here I put in here because this is a shot at 700mm, and I've cropped it in an absolutely huge amount. So this is a tiny percentage of the actual original image, and this is an Arctic fox pup here I'm having an explore, and it's still nice and sharp, very usable image. Background could have been nicer, but there's limited opportunities where this was taken to get a better background, and I'd rather get an opportunity to get a photo of the pup rather than miss the opportunity. So I couldn't crop it any more to get rid of that background, because this is already so heavily cropped in. This is kind of the limit of where you'd want to crop in with a converter and the 500mm, but it's still a really nice, usable, sharp image, nice separation, and you can't really complain at that distance. And the last image here I've put in here because this is using the eye tracking on the R3, and this lemur was popping in and out of this tree so quickly you had split seconds to get a photo, but the eye tracking locked on perfectly, the lens focused absolutely perfectly as well, and managed to get this nice sharp image. Eyes are absolutely dead on where they want to be, colours are really nice, and just an overall really nice image that just shows you, even though the lens is really old, that you can still use it with the mirrorless, with the eye tracking, and you shouldn't have any problems at all. Now, as you can see from those 4 images, this is still a very capable combination, a very capable lens. But there's a few things you do need to think about before you buy this. This is an incredibly, I would say, I'm not going to use the word cheap, but a well-priced prime lens at the moment. Looking around about 1200 to 1400 depending on condition. If you want excellent, with everything included, probably looking around the £1,800 mark, which for a prime lens like this, which is an f4 and offers great low light ability, isn't a lot of money. What I will say the warnings is a very heavy lens. It's very weighted to the front, so when you are trying to hand hold it and you have it with your camera, you are going to feel like you are tipping nose down ever so slightly. Unlike the more modern version, Mark II, the weight is more central in the lens, so it's easier to balance. The Mark II is also a lot lighter than this lens here. Because of it being a heavier lens and all that weighted filament near the front, it is a slower focusing lens than something like my 300mm. Now my 300mm is technically an older lens than this 500mm, but because the elements are lighter, even though I'm using it on an R3, which is way better autofocus in this lens than the R7 was, and even noticeably better than my R6 was, it is still slower than my 1DX Mark II. That is because that is obviously then a native attached lens, rather than on my R3 where you are having to use the adapter. This will always slow down the lens. You will also slow down the frames per second you'll get from this camera. If I'm running this on full mirrorless mode, 30 frames a second, I will be getting around about 20 frames a second on this lens. Now that is still way more than is necessary for most applications, but please be aware of that, because if you are someone who uses this camera or another mirrorless camera that only does 20 frames a second, you're likely to only be getting about 12-13 frames a second, and it goes down like that. So you do need to think of like that. Same situation you used to have with the old Sonys when mirrorless, when they first came out and you could run adapters for the Canon lenses, you would only get 5 frames a second even if your camera did 30. There is a natural slowing down process that will happen because the data is having to travel through a different section, a different point here, which is always going to slow down that data. Now, as you've seen from the images though, taken from this camera and that lens combination, you're still going to get very good, very usable, very sharp imagery that can even be cropped in quite far as well if needed to, which I've shown you as well on one of the photos with the Fox Cub. That is a very, very heavy crop on a lens that is old and a camera that's 24 megapixels. Now, if you were running this on an R5, an R5 Mark II, you'd get an even better image quality because you've got that 45 megapixels to then crop in from. So that's another thing to think about, what megapixels is your camera. Now I've used this lens with the R7, as I've said before as well, that's 36 megapixels. The issue with the R7 with this lens is the focusing is noticeably slower. So you do have to think as well, what mirrorless camera are you using with these big older lenses, because you will have a difference in performance depending on what level of mirrorless camera you use. Now the R3, I have no problems at all with any of my EF lenses. They are super fast focusing, and that is sometimes also due just to how much raw power you get from having a bigger battery in here. So you've got the more powerful battery in the R3, and that allows the camera to drive the focusing system faster and allows it to use those heavier glass and manipulate them better than something that has the smaller batteries like the R5, the R6 and the R7. Now with the R6, it wasn't as bad as the R7. It was still very, very usable, and I did enjoy using that combination. I preferred having that ever so slight faster autofocus and use my 1DX Mark II with this lens a lot more. As I say, it's not as much an issue with the lighter, smaller EF lenses. So my 7200, no issues at all in any mirrorless camera I've used, and that's one of the Gen 1 7200 f2.8s. My 300mm, you do notice a little bit slower as you go into those cheaper mirrorless cameras. So the R7 was noticeably slower than the R3, but the R6 isn't as noticeably slower as it would be to the R3. So that is another thing you do have to think about when you are using these bigger, older lenses, is what mirrorless camera are you using. If you had an R7, for example, you'd be way better off getting something like the 200 to 800 or 200 to 500 or something like that RF lenses, and you'll have a much faster autofocus. You won't get as good a low light condition quality as you will with this lens, but you will get that faster autofocus. If you're using anything, I'd say R6 Mark II and above, you can use these and still get very good autofocus quality. And as I say, you're still going to get that absolutely pro grade lens image quality from this, because it's still a pro grade L lens. You've got the L glass, you've got the weather sealing, you've got all the good stuff you get from that L quality product. So it's something that, even though I have the 200 to 400 and I have the 300mm and I have loads of converters and everything like that, I still keep this in my arsenal because of how good it is at low light photography with that reach. And when I put a 1.4 converter on there, I have 700mm at 5.6 on a very stable and very fast platform. And even sometimes I take photos of the moon and put the 2x converter on an 800mm f8, taking photos of the moon, you get pin sharp imagery of the moon. So it's a very good lens, something I'm definitely keeping in my arsenal. If you are using an R6 or above, something I would 100% recommend if you want a big, inexpensive, inverted commas, prime lens, I would 100% consider one of these. Make sure you get the least good condition one, so you're spending that sort of 1400 and above sort of zone. Make sure you get the nice carry case, everything like that, because if you do want to resell in the future, they'll keep the values then nice and solid for you. So hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe, comment and like, as you guys always do. Let me know your thoughts on this lens if you have it, or if you're thinking of buying it. If you think I'm wrong, put it down in the comments as well. I am happy to read any of your opinions, and I will comment back to pretty much every comment that is put on the video. So I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.